Hello there! Welcome to my channel. This is a little bit of a different video than what I'm used to doing. Instead of doing what I normally do, which is review e-ink note-taking devices, we're going to take a look behind the scenes at kind of the business aspects of my channel. I'll share some of the stats from YouTube. We'll also go into some of the finances, and you'll get a real sense of what it's like to run and produce this channel. The reason why I'm doing this is because I've seen other videos, other YouTube channels that have done this, and I found it really interesting and helpful. And I thought it would be interesting and helpful for other people to see my stats as well. I run a pretty small channel. We'll look at the statistics, but I think it's pretty successful within the niche that I operate in. I like to think of this as my little corner of the internet. What I do is I review e-ink devices and particularly note-taking devices. Now, if you're not clear what e-ink is, the best thing to think about is the Kindle from Amazon, the e-reader device. That's probably the most popular application of e-ink. It's certainly not the only one. We see e-ink in signage, and we see it in other devices, including note-taking devices, which is the area that I focus on. Note-taking devices take that reading world that you get with a Kindle, but adds to it the ability to take notes in a notebook and all sorts of sophisticated tools that comes along with that. Some of these devices work as kind of quasi-Android tablets as well, so it's a pretty interesting space. I spend most of my channel reviewing these types of devices or having discussions, lists, or focus on various aspects of the e-ink note-taking experience. So that's what my channel is. A big reason for why I do it is because as much as I really love these devices, and I think they're great and everyone should want one, it's nearly impossible for anyone to go out to a store and get hands-on experience with any of these devices. It's pretty rare to have one of these things on display. And so there's a need for folks like myself, and there's others in this space as well, to kind of use YouTube as a way of showing off these devices and talking about its functionality and what it's like to use it. It's not as good as the hands-on experience, and there's limitations to the forum, but it's certainly better than nothing. And I think it adds a lot of value to folks, and my channel really is designed to help other people, as well as express my interest in this field. So that's the purpose of the channel. So given that, let's go ahead and dive on into the stats around my channel, and I think it paints a good picture of how the channel operated, particularly last year, which is the only full year that I've run the channel, having started it in April of 2023, and then we'll paint a picture and then we'll go from there. Okay, so we're going to start off by looking at my numbers for 2024, and we have a nice summary here. End of the year with about 3,500 subscribers, which is great, and 383,000 views. That was cool too. I was really surprised at the 87 uploads. My goal is to try to get one, maybe two a week, so I expected to be between 50 and 60 videos. So 87 was a lot. And I'm not really quite sure how I had time to do all of that. So that definitely threw me. 9.3 thousand likes, which is great. And 1.3 thousand comments. That really surprised me as well. I had no idea that there were that many comments, although I do encourage dialogue in my channel. And truth be told, a lot of those comments are from me replying to other people who have posted. So that definitely inflates the numbers a bit. But still, I was surprised to see these numbers. But these give a great overview of the size of my channel, which is fairly small, but I think fairly successful as well. Now this graph essentially does an excellent job of kind of telling the story of what happened with my channel last year. And you can see some of the statistics in the top row, things like views and watch time and subscribers, as well as the income, which we'll get into more depth on later. But the basic idea here is that no matter what view you're looking at, the graph pretty much looks the same. So you see these long valleys broken up by these peaks. And the peaks in the graph essentially represent when I start to do a review series around a really popular device. Sometimes the peak corresponds with my first video, which is kind of a unboxing and hardware review. Sometimes it corresponds to the last video, which is my final overall review of the device as a whole. It just varies, and I'm not quite sure why one gets preferred over the other. But those two videos one of them tends to be my most popular for a given device. And I'll do other videos in between as I go through my review process. So as we can see here, as we're approaching the midpoint of the year, we get our first spike, and that was for the BooksGo 10.3. That was an exciting device that kind of came out of nowhere and is generally well regarded. So it did well in the videos. You see the most largest spike is there around the September timeframe, and that was the Remarkable Paper Pro. Remarkable is probably the biggest mover in this industry, probably the second most notable brand, aside of Kindle, in the e-ink space, and they rarely release devices. So when they released that device, it obviously got a lot of views. If we go on further, just a few months later, was the Books Note Air 4C. That's really the other spike that we see around the October timeframe. And then it kind of flattened out from there, a little bit of a bubble up toward the end of the year for the Supernote Manta. There's a spike there as well, but that followed through into 2025, so we don't see that here. The valleys represent, obviously, times between these major releases. I'm still reviewing devices often during these time periods, but I'm also going into other types of videos, usually related to the e-ink space, and they're not as popular, but you can see that the height of the valleys has been growing over time, particularly in between the peaks. And so that gives you a pretty good sense of how the channel is growing, relative to these large devices going out. This is a chart that shows the number of people viewing who aren't subscribed versus who are. And this, from what I can gather, is a pretty standard proportion. This is an area of frustration for a lot of YouTubers. Why don't those 85% of people subscribe? But they don't. That's pretty normal. And about 15% do. Please subscribe. I guess that's my plug for that. But this is actually a pretty normal distribution. If we look at some of the viewer demographics, predominantly male, almost 90% male, 10% female. Shout out to the ladies out there. And then you can see the age group is almost a normal distribution with a center point between the 35 to 44 year category. So that's just basically a demo of the people watching the channel. Where they're watching from, I've got the top countries listed in the long table and then the biggest cities on the short table. What's really cool about the channel is it is a global channel. Yes, the US is a plurality of the viewers. It's not a majority. And you can see even in this one table alone, all 4 of the world's 7 continents are represented. Of course, we don't see Antarctica. The 2 continents missing, Africa and South America, are represented. You just have to keep going further down to get to them. So it's one of the fun things about the channel is the fact that it does have such an amazing reach. And this is really kind of a story of our times. Now, as we focus on revenue, we saw that $2,005 or $2,600 number earlier. And what it's comprised of is predominantly YouTube ads. So the moment I was able to monetize, which happened toward the end of 2023, that's when I hit the 1,000 subscriber mark and then applied for monetization. That's when I was able to start receiving money for those ads. And again, it almost all comes from that source. There is a small amount, that 10%, are for people who are subscribed to YouTube. They pay a monthly fee, so I get a little bit of that. And then I have a button, as a lot of YouTubers do, where people can donate money. I've had a few donations, and that kind of rounds out the revenue there. So let's take a look at my income statement from the beginning of the channel, which again was April of 2023 to the end of December. We'll start with the revenue. Of course, there's our YouTube revenue, just a little bit at the end of 23, and then a steady flow in 2024. I do receive, on occasion, devices free from the manufacturer for review. The only condition of my review is just that I review it at all. How I review it, I'm complete freedom in that terms, but I do get the device as compensation for that process. And I've received 3 devices last year. The Rare 2, the Big Me S6 Color Plus Lite, and then the Viwoods Mini. Those are the 3 devices that were given to me, and I subsequently did reviews. Recommended 2 of them, but the 3rd not so much. I did a little bit of freelance work early on, writing a few articles on the internet, so I got a little bit of compensation for that. And then I do owe taxes. This is a hobby, it's not a business, so I'll have to pay taxes on that revenue, and you can see what my net revenue is. Virtually nothing when I started, and now it's kind of a respectable, almost $2,500. Now the expense side of the equation, we'll start with devices. Again, I got a few devices for free, but I pay for most of the devices. I mean, vast majority of stuff I review, I pay for out of pocket. And those are the expenses associated with that. Went down slightly from 23 to 24, predominantly because I had bought an expensive all-in-one PC monitor, which was an E-Ink based product. That was like $2,000 alone for that item. So that really explains most of the discrepancy between the 2 years. Otherwise, the spend is fairly stable. Video equipment, I have 2 cameras, I have associated lighting and microphones and all sorts of things like that. And so I've spent quite a bit of money on that. Stylus and nibs, so I bought styluses independent of devices. I did a review series for a period of time on styli, and those are the expenses related to that. And then there's just some other small things. The result of that is my expenses have run between 7 to 8K roughly, and therefore my net income has run from 8,000, that is net loss, from 8,000 in my first year to a little over 5,000 in this past year. So this is clearly a labor of love. I don't make money doing this, and my revenue really is meant to curb the expenses. Now, looking forward into this year, 2025, I'm projecting similar YouTube revenue that I had last year. This may be a little bit conservative because I do anticipate my channel growing, but I wasn't sure what to put there, so that's kind of my estimate for now. I don't estimate I'll get any free devices. That may not be the case. You just don't plan for them. They just kind of happen throughout the course of the year, if at all. So I don't have anything budgeted for that. No freelance work, and then the anticipated taxes is there, and so I'm thinking I'll get about $1,600 or $1,700 of net income in 2025. And then going to the expenses, we'll carry forward with our my general device budget around $5,000. Of course, we've got a little bit of inflation. I don't anticipate spending much on video equipment. I have 2 really good cameras. I think I've got all the supplies I need. I'm sure I'll buy something, but nothing of any substance. I have a lot of really good tech that I've sunk money into, and I'm trying to reduce expenses on this end. Probably we'll do a little bit of work with styli and nibs. We'll see how that goes, and just another budget, just as a contingency. So I anticipate spending about $6,000 in total expenses this year, and that will be a net of just under $4,500 loss. And that's my budget for 2025. So at this point, I thought I might go over a couple wish list items for myself. Things that would be great if things were done a little differently going forward, and probably won't happen, but I kind of wish they did. So the first thing, perhaps the most obvious, is I kind of wish I could run my channel at a break-even pace and not spend money to keep the channel afloat. I do have some savings that I have, so I'm not going into debt for the channel or anything like that. I'm able to self-fund it, but at some point, I would like to see that expense cap drop. But I'm not that willing to do many things to be able to make that happen. I'm not willing, for example, to do affiliate links. Many of my peers do affiliate links, and those are links where you watch their video, and if you're interested in buying the device, you click on it, and that creator gets a little bit of credit from the company for that purchase. That's something I've only done it once. It was a very special circumstance, which I won't talk about here. I talked about that in a prior video. But it's something I generally want to shy away from. I've not seen the usage of affiliate links bias other YouTube videos or creators. I want to be very clear about that. But I do worry, just from my personal basis, about the perceived conflict of interests, and I'm trying to help people ultimately, so it just doesn't feel right for me to do affiliate links, and so I'm not going to go that direction. Another direction I'm not going to go is around one-off sponsorships, and that's certainly something that would reduce the amount of expenditure overall, but the amount of effort to, to research various products, or and put together those types of ads, the vetting that would be involved and what have you, I'm just not interested in putting that level of effort. What I would love, going back to this wish list concept, is a sponsor maybe over 3 months or 6 months that offered, say $250 a video, where I would put in an ad for a product that I could believe in. That would limit the vetting to, this one or series of products from one company that I felt comfortable advocating for, and then just kind of simplify things while bringing in that revenue. That's probably a bit of a pipe dream. I don't think that sponsorships generally work like that unless they're in a much larger channel than mine. So it's probably not going to happen. People do reach out to me for sponsorships from time to time, but nothing has been of anything that I've been willing to do. So that'll probably remain the case for the remainder of the year. But if I had my wish, I would have a more longer term sponsor that I believed in. And of course, this probably goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, the sponsor could never be a company that I'm reviewing. That's, of course, a conflict of interest. So anyway, probably won't happen, but it's on the wish list. The other thing that's on my wish list, and this is very specific to this industry, is that I am getting a little concerned about a trend that's kind of starting to coalesce around companies that give their devices to YouTube creators in advance of the release of the product. And the concern here is that obviously, the bigger channels get deference around getting these devices. And of course, that makes sense from a business perspective. If you are the company making the device, you're just sending it out to those channels that you think will have the most reach. So that certainly is fine. The problem I have, though, is that while I don't think this has happened yet, I worry that over time, as that trend continues, favoritism will start becoming a factor in who gets what devices. And if you think about that, that's in the interest of the companies as well. If they're giving out a device to a YouTube channel, they want to make sure that device is eventually equating to sales. And so what that does, therefore, is that these folks that potentially are getting these devices in advance are doing two things. Number one is that you worry about how they're going to review the device based on that level of favoritism and wanting to keep that relationship up. And then you also worry that as a creator, when a device first comes out, my numbers are usually really good relative to other channels when we're releasing our videos about the same time. But if everyone else gets a head start, I can see that in my numbers. And that's really unfortunate. My wish list item around this is that companies offer devices to reviewers in a much wider net. They can still differentiate between those reviewers that they want to emphasize versus those they don't by giving devices free to those they want to emphasize and allowing channels like mine to purchase the device the only advantage of getting it earlier than would otherwise be the case. To me, that would level the playing field in a very fair way. I do want to emphasize that I don't think as of today, as of this filming, that there has been that bias among YouTube creators reflected in their videos. I think people are doing fair reviews, and I don't have any concerns with the reviews that many of my peers are doing. They're doing an excellent job as far as I can tell. I just worry about this in the future and what the potential implications of this structure is. And so my wish list, level it out, let people like me pay in to review their devices, again, with the freedom to say whatever we want. And if you want to prefer your channels that have the better reach by giving them a free device, by all means, it totally makes sense. So why not? So that would be my two wish list items, a long-term sponsor and a level playing field. And yeah, neither's going to happen. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful, learning kind of about my channel, about how it kind of operates and the numbers behind it, and maybe a little bit of insight into myself and my wish list items. If you have any questions about any of that, please post those in the comments. I guess one last postscript thing is, yes, the channel's running at a loss, and I kind of wish that it weren't, but this is not a pledge drive. Keep your wallets in your pockets. I'm still having fun putting the channel together. It's still something I get out of, both in terms of being able to review these devices, as well as kind of keep up with the industry, and then relate with my peers, particularly with the team. So I'm getting a lot of fun out of this. I get a lot of utility out of this. I've become a much better videographer. When I first started, and those videos are still available, I was just using my phone to film, and now I've got these really sophisticated cameras, which I'm barely scratching the surface of in terms of what they can do. So I've evolved, and I've gotten a lot out of this process. So hopefully I didn't come across as whiny at any point, but I was trying to create a very honest and transparent picture of what it's like to run my YouTube channel, and hopefully I did that. All right, any comments, again, put them in there. I'll go ahead and respond to them if I can, and otherwise, I hope you have a great day.